Hi everyone, my name is Dan Richardson. I'm currently finishing my PhD at Open Lab, Newcastle University. My work is around how mobile learning technologies can better capitalise on the learning resources that can be found in local communities. And today I'm going to walk through some of the work we did in 2019. This series of studies directly follows on from our previous publication, which reports on the design, development and evaluation of a mobile learning platform originally called ParkLearn, now titled Our Place. Our Place is a mobile learning platform consisting of Android, iOS and web applications. It allows for users to create their own bespoke, interactive mobile learning activities for themselves or for others. And you can also complete activities that others have chosen to share with you. These activities are made up of smaller tasks, focused around a single interaction. One improvement over the previous version, ParkLearn, is that activity authors can also add follow-up tasks to appear once a given task has been completed. Given the fairly wide range of task types available, this means that you can very easily create fairly complex interactions. So for example, the location hunt task asks users to find a given GPS coordinate by using their current distance from it, and it beeps faster as they get closer. This means that an activity creator can ask the user to go to a specific location, and using follow-up tasks, you can then ask them to listen to an audio clip about the place that they're currently standing, or be asked to take photos or videos in the location and then reflect on a listened audio clip with their own clip. In the previous set of studies, we had great success with teachers and community members creating their own activities and found that the application supported teachers in running engagements across multiple learning contexts, and that the creative aspects of the app supported greater engagement from students, and that mobile learning technologies could be really effective gateways toward encouraging active engagement with civic spaces and communities. These are all elements we wanted to explore further, and we thought that having students be the activity creators would be an interesting way to do this. However, our previous school engagements were a bit sporadic, and so we wanted a more structured delivery method which would be more reliably implemented in schools and different technologies. One pedagogy which seemed particularly well suited to this was project-based learning, or PBL. PBL presents learners with a given problem or task requiring them to investigate and work on a given subject over a longer period of time. These projects will usually result in the creation of an artifact in response to the problems, such as videos, reports or artworks. Previous research has even argued that PBL can offer greater levels of student autonomy and that it can build bridges between classroom activities and real-life experiences. In this case, we want students to investigate an element of local heritage and, using their findings, create their own mobile learning content for others to use. There's been a lot of work around the use of technology-enhanced learning within PBL, including research and data collection stages, knowledge sharing and artifact creation even. And many of these could be done with mobile learning technologies, but there's very little field-tested generalizable guidance on how these mobile learning technologies could be used in this way within real-world PBL contexts. And so in response, we decided to develop a generalizable framework for using mobile learning technologies to create a public entity during PBL. This project-based mobile learning framework, PBML, asks students to create a mobile learning artifact as a final public entity following a series of PBL engagements in response to the teacher's chosen topic. This first version of the PBML framework was created with the essential elements of PBL in mind, those being a challenging problem or a question, sustained inquiry, an element of authenticity, a degree of student control, reflection, critique and revision, and then a final public product. This framework will be evaluated and refined over the course of several studies using a design-based research approach. This framework's real-world performance was assessed within school contexts and through holding studies across 3 different schools and a summer school of travelling showmen, who I will introduce later. Our first study was with a secondary school in a fairly affluent area. Year 8 class's history teacher, who we called Teacher 1, was assigned to work with us by the school's upper management. Due to pressures around formal assessments, we only really got 2 hour-long classroom sessions with the students. Teacher 1 decided that having the students to create a digital history trail of the school's village using Our Place would be a good short project for this time frame. Because they had already given the students a significant number of resources around the local village prior to us joining, and so believed that the class would be well prepared in terms of trail content. Teacher 1 actually said the students should already have ideas of what they want to do. The issue is what the software can do and whether it can easily be tied in with the plans that they have already made. And so in this case, the research in the domain stage took place before the other ones. and we had a very limited amount of time with the class, so teacher one suggested that the students actually create the Our Place activities in pairs during their free time between the two sessions. And this meant that we could dedicate the first session to being demonstrate the medium, and then the second one could be used to go through the teacher's work, students' work with them. The first session was spent demonstrating the medium. We prepared an activity for the students to go through on the school grounds, which utilised all of the app's interaction types and introduced the concept of follow-up tasks. Upon return to the classroom, we also ran the students through the activity creation process, which you can read more about in the paper. We don't really have time here. By the end of the session, all of the students said that they understood how to make their own activities and were asked to then produce their trail for the next session, which is 3 weeks later. Unfortunately, most of these activities were quite shallow, only having a few tasks each, which were often concentrated more on the interaction with the technology than the actual content. This actually surprised teacher one, who had thought that the resources given to the students would have supported deeper content, and the lack of time with the app would result in less confidence in using it. Which wasn't really the case. Teacher one actually believed that giving the process greater degrees of structure and scaffolding might help the students develop stronger content. And so in response, we added a new step in the PBML framework, prototyping. In this stage, students would create a low-fidelity prototype version of their final public entity using non-technological mediums such as even pen and paper. Doing this means that students don't require access to mobile hardware. It lets students design without also having to learn the technology's authoring interfaces. It emphasises the learning focus as being on the content rather than the technology, as teacher one wanted. And finally, it also allows for the introduction of visual learning and tangible interactions, so it more easily supports collaboration between students and group work. Because it's really likely that each type of mobile learning public entity would require its own form of prototype because they're all different. So for a video app, you could make storyboards. For a location-based app, you could print out and label maps. And for Our Place, prototyping Our Place activities, we designed a jigsaw method where each piece of a jigsaw represented a task within the activity, and students could write the task instructions onto the pieces directly. The interaction of the task would be designated with smaller task-type pieces which slotted inside, and tasks could be interconnected in different directions, allowing for follow-up tasks to be planned out and simulated. We assessed this updated version of the framework in 3 further studies. Because we're tight on time, I'll quickly cover what happened in each and then talk about the overall findings afterwards. The next study in School 2, it was a tiny rural primary school. We worked with the entire Year 4 year group, which consisted of only 7 children, because we had much more time to work with the class than with School 1. Teacher 2 actually decided that we make 2 activities, a practice one, and then one which properly engaged with the village's history. As before, we demonstrated the app through the use of a pre-made activity which the children could complete on the school grounds, which went fine. The students initially struggled with the jigsaws due to them being a bit abstract, but after a few minutes they understood the links between the puzzle pieces and the structure of the app. The students decided to create their adventures for the first set of activities, using the app to set riddles and challenges for the younger students. And then after sharing them with the younger students, the Year 4s then hosted a school assembly where they talked about their activity designs. For the second set of activities, each student picked a different historical structure within the village to research and produce an activity about. After researching using the teacher's materials, they elected to actually skip the prototyping stage and go straight into activity authoring. The Year 4 students helped to guide the younger students through the village and help them complete the activities. So again, they were able to share in place. School 3 was an inner city primary school. We connected with a teacher whose class had campaigned for the installation of a nearby commemorative plaque for a slavery abolitionist. When we approached the teacher, they were very interested in having the class create Our Place activities for other plaques in the area. And as before, we demonstrated the app through the use of a pre-made activity on the school grounds. After the demo, the Year 4 and Year 6 classes actually combined for the study, working in mixed groups to research each of their chosen historical local figures. And by the second engagement, each group had pages of notes which they could use to develop the prototype activities, which went quite smoothly. The third session saw the students create their activities in Our Place and visiting the sites to collect photographs and accurate GPS locations. During the final session, the groups visited the sites and swapped activities with each other. Some of the creative tasks asked students to complete quizzes, listen to audio narrations, and even role play as historical figures during video interviews. After our engagements with School 3, Teacher 4 had suggested it would be interesting to get different schools or communities to use tools like Our Place to exchange life experiences. Teacher 3 suggested that we do a couple of sessions together with a summer school she helped run for travelling showmen, who are communities of travellers who run seasonal fairs and events around the UK. We arranged for Teacher 3's class to visit the fair and for the show children to share their ways of life with that class. Due to the short-lived nature of the fair, though, we only really had one session to introduce the technology and have the show children create activities. And so to save time, we decided to go straight to the prototyping stage rather than introduce the medium. Which, while the transition from the jigsaws to the technology was actually fairly smooth, the children didn't really fully grasp some of the more complicated features of the app, such as follow-up tasks, and some of the children were actually disappointed when they realised they missed out on using them properly. Through all these studies, we identified 3 themes: configuration and compromise, harnessing students' desire for independence, and leveraging place through PBML. So the first theme, configuration and compromise, recognises that in these studies it was necessary to adapt the framework in response to each teaching context's limitations, usually based on time. We argue that in the real world, teaching contexts are rarely ideal, and so approaches to working within them should be adaptable and open to compromise, hence why we implemented the framework in various real world contexts. However, it was clear that compromising on different parts of the framework had different results. For example, we believe that skipping the prototyping stage in School 1 actually contributed towards the lack of engagement with the domain and put the students' main focus on the technology itself. Similarly, the lack of meaningful demonstration of the medium meant that some of the summer school children were left disappointed in their activities. So the studies also highlighted the value of students sharing their creations with their classmates and the wider community as a way of boosting the perceived value of the final creation as public entities. And so we argue that researchers and practitioners should weigh up these compromises when configuring the framework according to what they want the focus of the project to be on, whether that be the utilisation of the technology, the children's understanding and application of the domain knowledge, whether they share their activities, their creations in authentic contexts, or through a significant time investment, or 3 of those. We found that this project-based mobile learning structure also helped harness the students' desire for independence by giving them large degrees of control and autonomy over the work. It also supported them putting in personal touches, such as inclusion of jokes, custom artwork, and even recordings of them singing. And when sharing their activities with the peers, the students were clearly proud of their creations and enjoyed taking a teaching role. This was shown in School 2, where the teachers even recognised it and played it up. They played up to the students' desire for perceived maturity by having them host the assembly. The younger students took this as something to aspire towards, and older students took like a mentor-style role. And we suggest that future mobile learning designs can harness students' desires for independence as a motivational force by granting them opportunities for autonomy and personal flourishes, as well as platforms through which to share these personal creations. The final theme relates to how PBML processes supported the schools in leveraging place as learning resources. The teachers noted that the framework offered new opportunities for engagement with local heritage. This was in part due to the nature of working towards the creation of a public entity, which gave the students a justification and motivation for researching each subject. Something covered in further detail in the paper is actually how the students' preconceptions of the travelling showman changed following technology-mediated personal interactions with the community and their lived experiences. And so we argue that mobile learning technologies are uniquely well suited to taking advantage of these kind of learning resources, as through this kind of framework, technology can not only support classroom-based PBL, but also situated learning in authentic space and place. Unfortunately, that's all I've got time for. Thank you for watching. If you found this interesting, I'd encourage you to check out the open access paper, which features much more detail. Thanks.